Welcome to the Business of Cleaning. We are the business podcast for the cleaning industry, and what we do is bring industry expertise straight to your ears every single week. For our April mini season, we've brought on guest Mike Derryberry to talk about an introduction to leadership. Leadership is huge, and it is important that you learn how to leverage it as a success tool for your business. Get ready, sit back, and just listen. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 2 of our mini season with Mike Derryberry from Compass Cleaning Solutions. We are going to continue our mini season's theme of leadership and this train of thought we have gone of what actually constitutes good leadership, makes a good leader, and what you really need to look at to make sure that you are doing the best you can for your company and for yourself. And so we're going to, for this particular episode, talk about leadership itself. Is it something you're genetically born with or a talent that you just have lately there? Or is it something that you have to cultivate and grow? And so I'm going to go ahead and let Mike say hi again and jump right in.
Hey, Haley, how you doing? Yeah, this is kind of one of my hot points. I hear people saying, "Oh, leaders are they're just these natural leaders." No, they're not. Malcolm Gladwell talked about the whole idea of having 10,000 practices. Michael Jordan hits 10,000 free throws, and a hockey player shoots 10,000 pucks, and somebody else hits 10,000 tennis balls or whatever it is, or somebody does 10,000 lines of code, and that's when they become, oh man, they're this amazing person. Well, yeah, they put the effort and they put the time into it, and of course they are, because they've practiced at it. Well, leadership is the same thing. What makes a good leader are basic skills, and skills can be learned and skills can be developed. Being able to motivate other people or to give them a motivation. I don't think you can motivate anybody. I mean, that's honestly, I can't make Haley do what I want her to do. She can only do what she wants to do. I might compel somebody to do something by force, but I wouldn't really call that leadership as much as it is, something else. So the reality is, leaders are people who have made a decision that they want to influence or to challenge or to bring to the table ideas that other people can follow. But at the same time, leadership involves a variety of other kinds of skills. Skills like, apologize for the dump truck doing its thing. Skills like learning to communicate in a clear way. Skills like being able to discern when we need to pivot. Skills like learning what it takes to provide an environment where people feel like they're trusted and that they're safe and that they can grow and then they can be everything that they want to be within the confines of this business adventure, or whatever kind of adventure. It could be a nonprofit, it could be your church, it could be your ball club, it could be bowling, whatever it might be. The point is, a leader provides that safe environment. And I tell our people all the time, my job is to make sure that you have all the tools, you have all the resources, and you have my support to get done what you need to get done. And if you need me to help you give you some direction, and if you need my help in terms of giving you an understanding of why we're doing what we're doing, kind of getting back to last week, the idea of knowing what we're doing and why we're doing it, then I can provide that. But ultimately, the responsibility to get something done is that individual's. But if I don't provide them with an environment so that they can be successful, then that's not being a leader, that's being a manager. And managers are there's a place for managers in certain situations, I suppose. But honestly, I think every organization would be better off if instead of managers, we had leaders who people wanted to follow and wanted to engage with. I've been in situations where there have been people within the organization who were not in any kind of official position. They had no title. They had no, um, major responsibility. Nobody reported to them. They were just a person involved in the organization. And literally everybody would look to that person whenever a decision was going to be made and like, what is Bob going to do? What is Joyce going to do? Right. And when they would make a statement, and everybody would engage. Right. I've been in situations where people have all the position, they have all the authority, they have the title, they have the whole thing, and they'll say something, and you can just see people digging their heels in, not wanting to do it, finding a way around it, trying to find some. That's not a leader. Just because you have the title, just because you have the position doesn't make you a leader. And just because you don't doesn't make you not a leader. You can be a leader. Anyone can be a leader, but it takes effort, it takes practice, it takes time, but you can become a leader.
I was thinking, as you were saying that, talking about those people who are natural leaders, even if they never want to assume like a actual leadership position or they haven't been graced with one. And I've hired somebody like that in a call center position that was scripted, right? These positions weren't super fun positions. So you had to find people that fit was there, or otherwise they weren't going to stay. And one of my favorite people I ever brought on had been a teacher. And what she brought, she was just super motivated and everything. She couldn't deviate from script. She had to enunciate very clearly, but she could bring her tone and just her energy to a call. And it would make a call so much more engaging. But she didn't just bring that to the customer, she brought that to the team. So her entire row was impacted by what she did. And if she was on board with something, that entire row or the people who worked around her would get on board. And that's because over her years of teaching, she had retired by the time she joined us. Over her years of teaching, she had learned to encourage, enable, cultivate, and grow people, because she was working with these tiny little people that need that so much, but grown people still need that. You were talking about motivation and how we're not really motivating because motivation has to come from the individual, inside the individual. But what you do is you enable and you cultivate and you encourage. And that's where that motivation in an individual starts to grow. And so when you can find somebody who is able to take their experiences and do those things, that's where you get a leader. And it's like she had years and years of experience and education and things that she compiled to give her the skills that she had, but they were skills.
Right.
Like you said, it was something that she learned. And I'm a personal believer of that too, because I take on things that I'm like, I've never done that. But if I have the right mindset, I can do that. I mean, I've done everything from roofing to creating a podcast to setting up training guides for a sales team. So like I've done all these random things that I never thought I could do. But I just said, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to break it down, make sense of it. And it's the same thing with leadership. What needs to be there to make a good leader? It's like, I hate this idea of putting managers in a position or supervisors. Okay, you're supervising, you're managing. It's so impersonal, and you're not creating that resonance in that environment that cultivates and grows people with that mentality.
Yeah, exactly. You use the term mindset. That's one of my favorite books. Just read this last year. Actually ended up reading it like 3 times. Um, Carol Dweck talks about, Professor Dweck, was a professor at Stanford University, and they did lots of research into childhood learning and all this kind of stuff. And one of the things that they discovered was that if you have a mindset that is a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset, your fixed mindset will basically force you into a situation or create a thought process where it's this idea leaders are born. You're just born to be a leader. No, that's a fixed mindset, and a lot of times what it does is when you have that mindset, it basically says, well, I wasn't born that way, so I can't be one, right? I can't do something because I wasn't born that way. I didn't get those gifts. I didn't get that. Well, a growth mindset says, I'm not a leader yet. I don't have those skills yet. That thing happened to me, but it was a learning experience, and now I learned something and I can be better next time, right? It's that kind of a mindset. What you're describing is a growth mindset. And I run into a lot of people, and they're leaders, or they're functional leaders, if you want, rather than actual true leaders. And they have this mindset. And the insidious part of that is that if you think that you were born with leadership, that automatically gives you privilege, which is just completely wrong. As a leader, your job is to hold everybody else up. Your job, you think of a pyramid or a triangle, right? It's upside down. The point's the ground, and the base is at the top. The leader is at the bottom of that pyramid. The leader is the one lifting everybody above them, and those people are lifting up the next group and the next group and the next group and the next group. We're lifting everybody up rather than everybody serving the leader or the person at the top in that position. And having this mindset that says, I was born this way, so I've got this leadership. It tends to lead to the typical pyramid situation. I'm a leader, therefore, everybody needs to serve me. It's about me, right? Because I was made this way. I was born this way. This is who I am. Whereas a growth mindset looks at it completely opposite and basically says, no, I'm learning some things. I'm not a leader. It's funny when you talk to a growth-minded leader, they don't believe that they're a leader. I mean, everybody else looks around and goes, "Dang, that is a great leader," and they're going, "Yeah, I'm not a leader," because in their mind they still have so much more to learn. They have so much more to do. They have so many things that they could do better, and it's just a different way of looking at the world. And if you look at the companies that really perform over the long haul. I mean, there are some companies that do really well in the short run, and they have what I would call, a fixed mindset, or they would have, this very short-sighted leader at the top. But if you look at a lot of organizations that live over a long period of time, maybe they go through several leaders, but those leaders are always what John Maxwell calls the servant leader. That is, that their job is to serve other people, is to help other people. It's the idea that they're supporting other people, and they don't see themselves as a leader. Their responsibility, they're a caretaker of the organization, and they feel a responsibility for the organization. They see themselves as not the most important. And it's so easy. I mean, we've all seen we know the two different, right? When we know the two different sides, we run into them and we go, oh my gosh, we got one of these, right? How can I get out of here as quickly as I possibly can, right? Or you run into someone like that and you go, oh my gosh, I have never had someone lead me like this. This is amazing, right? I really want to stick around and be a part of this and learn from this guy or gal, as the case may be. I remember I was going through a really rough time in the 90s with, it just seemed like everybody I went to work for went bankrupt in 18 months. I don't know what the deal was, but I went to work for this one guy towards the end of the 90s. And I had been working for people that were, let's just say they weren't the most pleasant people to work for. And I went to work for this one guy, and he was definitely a growth-minded leader. He was a true leader. He owned the company, but he was what I would, he was a leader. People would walk on hot coals for this guy. I mean, he was the best example that I had ever seen up to that point of a leader. And I remember going to work, and I kind of had a sense of that, but I didn't really understand it until about 2 months in. And he was having a conversation with me, and I realized in the midst of that conversation, he wasn't coming down on me. He wasn't criticizing me. He wasn't demanding things of me. He kept saying things like, okay, I see you struggling in this area. How can I help you? What is it you need from me? How can I help you do better? What is it that you need from me? And I thought, who asked those questions? Well, I've come to understand leaders ask that question. True leaders ask those questions. And I think we've all seen this whole idea kind of implode over the last decade or so. We've watched companies like Enron and other companies, even GE, they just, you go, man, there's some dysfunction in these companies, right? And you wonder what happened. Well, what happened was, in many cases, the leadership created an environment that was the normal pyramid rather than the upside down one, right? They did not have servant leaders in the organization. What they had was, it's all about me kind of leaders, right? So that's what I mean when I talk about leaders. You can learn to be that kind of person, by the way.
Yeah. And you were talking about like leaders don't think they're leaders. There is this humbling aspect about being a leader. Like you have to put other people before yourself. You have to bring yourself to the equation because you have to bring that passion, that drive. And you have to bring all those things to enable and grow other people, but you have to have that view, like that mindset of growing and enabling. And one of my favorite examples is back in college, when I first moved out of pre-med into business. About a semester in, I joined an academic fraternity, and they are a really cool academic fraternity that is nationwide, and they've done as well as they have because they have a lot of like-minded people, like-minded in the way that it's a lot of growth mindset people. We have leaders for just the new member class that comes in for the semester. And the guy who led mine is also one of my good friends. And I was talking to him about like how he led our class, and he was one of those people I looked up to. He enabled us in every which way, and he still does not see himself as a leader when he was in that position. And his mindset was just to take that new member class and make them better versions of themselves. He wanted us, to be better than he was. He wanted to see not us reaching his level, but going beyond. He wanted us to enable to continue to grow off of what everybody else had done. And that is such a powerful thing. And we fed off of that. We were so competitive in like all the best ways. And we had so much fun. And I saw such amazing things happen with that group of people and the people that they touched. And it's true, like, he does really good. He's excelling in his career and he continues to grow. And there's probably a part of him that wonders like how he got to that place, because that's just the kind of guy he is. But it's like you said, he has worked to develop himself and learn these skills, even if sometimes he doesn't realize it. And then when he steps into a leadership position, he is working from the bottom of an upside down pyramid, and he does it well. And that was something silly back in college when you don't even think of people having experience and having fully developed skill sets. But he put himself in a humble position to learn and develop those things. And he didn't come off with an arrogant mindset that he already had it. This was his spot. This was his position. Everybody better listen to him, sort of thing.
Do you recall what he did, what kinds of things that he did? What kind of practices that he did?
Trying to think back, one of the biggest things, if you're coming into an organization, sometimes the development process is very separate from the rest. And so he made sure that we had some things that we did internally and together. So we had a marketing project that we worked on. There was a sales project. And it would start small and he would watch it grow and things like that. And a lot of it is he would give us all the tools, or he'd give us the parameters, but they were very vague. And then he'd pass the responsibility over to us. And then he'd encourage us to take that and get involved. Our new member class was so engaged with the main chapter. I was interacting constantly with our executive members in the main chapter. I never felt like a new member throughout it. I felt like somebody who was growing and thriving. And there was just so many instances where like he would give other members opportunities to speak, and he knew everybody's skill set, or he was learning everybody's skill set. So when we had something come up, he'd be like, "Hey, if you're looking to do a certain project, maybe these people want to step up and help guide it because this person is very creative, or this person has worked on this sort of thing before and they have knowledge." And he would start to help us group and understand each other. And it was always giving us the right push in the right direction versus just dragging and dropping and stuff like that. But ultimately, the decisions were ours to make. Our success was ours to
But he
make.
made it safe, right? I mean, that's the
Mhm.
thing that I hear in that. It was you never felt like you were on your own. You never felt like you were kind of hanging out there by yourself. You felt like, one, you were part of a community, but you always felt like if you needed some help, somebody was going to be there to help you. In fact, it was going to be him for the most part. You
Mhm.
know, one of the things that you talked about, is he practiced these things. One, I think of the things that I have done personally. Um, One, reading books, right? They used to say that leaders are readers, right? And the reason they say that is that by reading you can pick up ideas from all kinds of people that you can integrate into your own life and that can become formative in the way that you approach things, right? But at the same time, I think there are putting yourselves in unfamiliar situations so that you're forced to have to learn something new, right? It's the idea of constantly learning. It's the idea of constantly developing a skill. Maybe I need, like just recently, I took a course on uh, having better, more robust conversations, right? And so I read this book, and then I went through the course, and it has helped me with my team because now I can have more effective and more productive conversations with my team, right? I can have better conversations with my friends. I can have better conversations with people in other organizations, our customers, our vendors. Because if I've got a question or I've got an issue, I've learned some skills, like how to ask the right questions, and what am I looking for when I ask that question, and what do I want to listen for. It takes time. It takes practice. And the people that you think of, if you think of the, the leaders that you think of, they're people who have practiced that skill. This person that you're talking about, they obviously had a growth mindset to start with. And by the way, just because you have a fixed mindset right now doesn't mean you can't change and you can't move and you can't learn how to have a growth mindset by practicing some things. I suggest starting with the book, mindset, but there is a way to help move your brain, move your thinking to a different mindset. But when you do that, then all of a sudden there are possibilities that you didn't see before. And now we can begin to test and to retest over and over. Like one of the things we talk around here, and it's kind of our axiom that we use. We dream big, we test small, we fail fast, and we learn always. So the idea is, you take it, you see this thing, I want to try this. Okay, great, go ahead and test it. Test it small so you don't like lose everything, but test it small. If it works, great, test it bigger. If it doesn't work, okay, you failed quickly, you learn something, and now you reiterate you iterate and you go back and you do it again. Did it work that time? Yeah, I made a change and it worked. Great, you learned something, right? I mean, it's the whole idea of practicing, learning. You're safe. Go try something. Learn how to be a leader. Learn how to be competent in a certain area. Um, I One of the things that I've learned through this last year is that I have the capacity to pivot quickly. I didn't realize I didn't realize I had the capacity, but I was forced in the capacity. You and I were talking about earlier, I'd gotten kind of complacent about just my leadership because I had such a great quality team. It's like, I can just rest on my laurels. These guys are great. Everything is good. And then I realized all of a sudden, okay, they're looking to me to give some guidance. They're looking to me to give some direction. And we had to shift. But the way I shifted was I said, okay, what do we want to do? There are certain things we want to do. And I went to them and I said, okay, I need your feedback. What do you think we should be doing? Getting them involved. Well, the more I got them involved, the more they got involved, right? I mean, they're, okay, you mean it's okay for me to have an idea? Yeah. Here's where we're going, but how do we get there? Well, and then they came up with some ideas and we tested a few things that didn't work. Okay, great. We learned something. We iterated and now it works, right? And so the idea behind pivoting in the middle of a situation, that's a skill you have to learn. I didn't realize that I had learned that skill, right? But because of all the things that we've gone through and we've been in the industry and the changes over the last 10 years, with the economy going and all kinds of regulations and the nonsense that we have to put up with, you have to iterate, you have to make adjustments. And I had learned that, but I didn't realize that I had learned that, right? Now, had I been conscious of it, I probably would have practiced a lot more. I would have, I would have been working at it a lot more. But nonetheless, it was there because I was actually doing it over time. And I think that too often, people who get into a position and then they have a fixed mindset, they don't want to test a new idea. Because if they test a new idea, then they'll think, oh, I'm a failure, and failure is not a good thing in their mind. In our world, we don't fail, we learn. It's not, failure is not the issue. Okay, it didn't work. Great, but what did you learn? Well, I learned this, this, and this. Great. Then it wasn't a failure because you learned something from it, right? And if you create that kind of environment as a leader, that's your job, is to create this environment where people feel free to test and to feel free to, try something different, and to really find a way to solve a problem without somebody just, you can't do it that way, you got to do it my way, right?
It's so true. I mean, just thinking of even, the mindset thing, I think a lot of it comes back there. No matter what you're doing, there's so many reiterations of the fixed versus the growth mindset. I've heard one of them being like an internal versus external locus of control, right? So people either feel they have control of a situation or that everything is just a product of their environment and they can't impact it.
Right.
And the people who have a feeling that they can impact the situation tend to thrive and grow and do better. They tend to be those people who, if they step up into a leadership position, are the ones who are able to develop themselves into great leaders. And it is the same thing of like the fixed mindset people a lot of times are external locus of control holders because they believe that things are just as they are. They're not going to change. And they tend to be the one when you tell them that they can stop being a fixed mindset person, they can grow into a growth mindset, that they don't believe you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But
it's kind of a catch-22.
Yeah, they just have to reframe their thinking. And we talked about in college, several of my classes inside my professional organization, my academic fraternity, we talked about all the time, get comfortable being uncomfortable. Yep. You have to be able to embrace an uncomfortable situation to grow. And so embracing the unknown or embracing things that make you uncomfortable, because that's an opportunity to learn. It's like you said, failure is uncomfortable, or this idea of when things don't succeed the way you think they should, that you failed, that's an uncomfortable feeling, but embrace that because those are learning experiences. The people who learn from them are embracing that situation, able to come back and say, okay, now what do I do? And then they act. So it's just very interesting because I've heard I've had actually a lot of fortune having a lot of great leaders that I've passed by in my life or interacted with or learned from or all of the above. And these are not new things. Like you said earlier, there are things that these great leaders have brought to the table. And I've been very fortunate to start to absorb. I think at even an earlier stage in my life, before I even stepped out into my career, I had these impressions being made on me, which is, I'm so fortunate for it.
Yeah, one of the things the idea about failing, I think is, the only time I tell our folks all the time, look, the only time you fail is when you didn't learn something. If it didn't go right and you didn't learn, then okay, it's a failure. But if you learn something, if you can take something out of it, if you can extract something that you learned from that situation, then it wasn't a failure because you learned something. And if you put the focus as a leader, if you create an environment where learning is first and foremost, not necessarily results, guess what? The results will come as a result of the learning, because it's in the midst of this experimentation and this learning and this cycle that the big results come out of. Okay, we stumbled a few times. Okay, but what did we learn? Well, we can't do this, but we can do this. Okay, great. Let's double down on what we can do. And then all of a sudden we find, oh, there's where the success lies. Exactly. That's what a leader is. But again, it requires that leader be willing to practice doing that, right? I mean, so how do you practice that? By doing it. So when a situation arrives, rather than go, oh, the world is falling, you ask the question, well, what did you learn? How can we iterate? What can we do different? What's the next step? And then give them the space and give them the ability to find another solution and to find another test and to work through it. They know your job is to tell them where we want to ultimately be. Let them figure out how to get there. I have this conversation with folks all the time. I was just talking to a guy the other day. He's a young entrepreneur. He's got a window cleaning company, and he's the only guy, right? And he's just slammed. The guy's working 16 hours a day, and I'm going, dude, you need to hire somebody. Yeah, but they won't do it like I do it. Okay, so little rule and this is something I learned from one of my mentors. If they can do it 80% as well as you, delegate it, right? I mean, give it to them. Let them work with it. Let them take it over. And too often we just get caught up on this whole idea that I got to do it all. No, you don't. Give them the freedom. Give it to somebody else and give them the freedom to work with it and to find a way through it. So Haley, I think the biggest thing we need to think about is this whole idea of made, not born, the difference between a fixed and a growth mindset. The biggest thing that I think that we need to understand is there are tools that we look at from the leadership standpoint. In other words, we look at a leader and we go, well, they have certain skill sets, but it's not their ability to do a specific job. It's how they lead, right? It's the way in which they interact. It's all these, in some sense, soft skills that they have that make them the leader that they are. But because we call them soft skills, they are skills and they are things that we can learn. And I would, just say to people, listen, if you want to be a better leader, do some work on being a better conversationalist, being a better questioner, right? Be a better listener, being allow yourself to be more creative, allow yourself to be learn how to be less controlling. These are all skills that you can learn. And I guess the thing I would say is look at some people that you think of as quality leaders. People that, would be people that you would admire and people that you think that would be a person I'd want to work for. And then look at what is it about that person that makes them a leader to you? Why do you think that they are a quality leader? Well, every time I'm around them, they ask so many questions and they're just so engaged with people and they just, they really want to be understanding of where you are and what you're about. Okay, that's a skill. Go develop that skill. Well, somebody else, looks at it and is that they're calm, they never freak out, they just seem like they're just in control. Well, what do you think? Then ask the question, well, what is it that allows them to do that? And maybe it's, that they've learned to not feel the fear of I'm going to look bad or whatever it is. Okay, well then start learning, figuring out and reading and doing and asking questions of other people who are good at that. How do you develop that ability to just stay calm in the middle of the storm? How do you do that? It's a skill. Bottom line is everything that a good quality leader does can be learned, it can be practiced, it can be developed, and you can be that same kind of leader. It's not a question of I was born this way, therefore I'm a leader, I'm cool, everybody else isn't, right? I mean, and that's just not. First of all, it ain't gonna fly these days, and it's not gonna make for a very pleasant experience. But the reality is, it never really has been. We just never challenged it before, right? It's just never understood before.
The tolerance has changed. The
Yeah,
understanding has
exactly.
changed.
Exactly. It's always been this way. We just never really knew it. In fact, you can go back 100 years and you can see some of the amazing leaders. I mean, you can go back and you can look at some of the stories about Henry Ford and some of the mega giants of industry. And the reality is, if you look at the way that the things that they wrote and the internal systems that they had and the values that they had and the purpose they had, you look at that and you go, oh my gosh, these were people who really understood, right? These were people who really got it. And listen, I mean, that if you want an example, go back 100 years because some of those guys really got it.
And they weren't born like that. They developed that.
Exactly.
They weren't leading people as toddlers. Trust me.
Yeah, exactly. They learned to become the kind of people, and they learned it through experience. They learned it through difficulties, failures, hard times, challenges. They learned how to be that kind of a leader.
Yeah. Just because it wasn't always a conscious thought that what I'm doing is actively working towards a leader, they were learning what actually worked in the world. So the understanding of it might have been different, but the results were the same as far as what they made with all of that work they put in, all of that development, education, and practice. It was what built a good leader.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, I think this was a great second episode for our mini season. I'm learning a lot and getting to bring up all of these important thoughts that have impressed upon me over the years. And it's so important to realize that a lot of what we're doing in life, especially leading, is skills that we develop. And you have to humble yourself and be willing to put in the work and the practice and the time and to build up the experience. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It might not even happen in the next couple of years, and that is perfectly fine. So.
Yep, exactly.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Mike, and thank you everybody for tuning in. Remember, we got 2 more episodes, so thank you.